The pounding on the front door wasn't just loud, it was violent, like someone was trying to break it down. Sheriff Logan Carter jolted awake, adrenaline slamming through his system before his brain could even catch up. A low guttural growl rumbled from the foot of his bed. Rex, his canine partner, was already up, ears pricked, body tense. The German Shepherd's instincts were razor sharp. If Rex was on high alert, Logan knew something was off. The pounding came again. Harder. Faster. Whoever was outside wasn't just knocking. They wanted in. Logan swung his legs out of bed, grabbing his sidearm and badge from the nightstand. His heart pounded, but his movements were steady, muscle memory kicking in. Years in law enforcement had drilled one thing into him: never ignore. A gut feeling. Barefoot and silent, he approached the door, pressing himself against the wall before leaning slightly toward the peephole. What he saw nearly made him laugh out loud. Two men stood on his porch, stiff-backed and serious. They wore uniforms that looked like they'd been ordered off a cheap costume website. Their black tactical shirts bore an unfamiliar eagle emblem, and their plastic badges had a bold, official-looking title: HOA Law Enforcement Division. What the hell? The taller one, bald and wearing sunglasses, before sunrise, stood like he was about to kick the door in. The other, shorter and clutching, a clipboard like it held the secrets of the universe, fidgeted nervously. Logan's smirk faded. This wasn't a prank. These guys were serious. Before he could process the sheer absurdity of the situation, a third figure stepped into view. Margaret Maggie Holloway, self-appointed queen of the Maplewood gated community, HOA president, and Logan's personal headache. Dressed in a pristine navy blazer, heels clicking against the porch, she was every bit the power-hungry suburban tyrant he expected. Smug, calculated, and completely in control. Logan exhaled slowly. "Oh, this is going to be good." Logan took a slow, measured breath and swung the door open. The early morning air was crisp, the street eerily quiet except for the distant hum of sprinklers. Rex stood rigid at his side, muscles coiled, teeth bared, ready. On the porch, Travis Mills, a little too enthusiastic for a fake cop, squared his shoulders and placed a hand on his flimsy utility belt like he was about to reach for something. Doug Peters, the one clutching the clipboard, looked less sure of himself, shifting his weight like he was reconsidering his life choices. Maggie, of course, stood between them, a self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. "Sheriff Carter," Travis started, voice thick with forced authority, "your vehicle is an unauthorized commercial vehicle. HOA policy strictly prohibits such violations in residential areas." Logan followed his gaze to his police cruiser. County-issued, fully marked, emergency lights intact. He blinked. "My commercial vehicle?" Doug nervously flipped through his clipboard, clearing his throat. "The policy is very clear, sir. Unauthorized. Government or commercial vehicles parked overnight are subject to immediate fines and removal." Logan pressed his lips together, exhaling through his nose. He turned to Maggie. "You called a whole SWAT team for this?" She smiled like she was enjoying a 5-star meal. "Rules are rules, Sheriff. You, of all people, should understand that." Logan fought the urge to laugh. Instead, he folded his arms. "What exactly do you plan to do about it?" Travis didn't hesitate. "If you refuse to comply, we'll be forced to take further action." Doug stiffened beside him, eyes darting to Logan's badge. He looked like he regretted waking up this morning. "Further action," Logan repeated, tilting his head. "You mean towing my legally authorized police vehicle? Or are we skipping straight to arresting me?" Maggie stepped forward, her voice saccharine. "Sheriff, I would really hate for this to escalate." "Would you?" She clasped her hands together. "Your vehicle is parked in direct violation of HOA policy. That means fines, legal repercussions, even removal." Logan raised a brow. "Removal?" Travis shifted his stance, puffing out his chest. "If necessary." Logan stared at them for a long, painful moment. Then he did something that threw them all off. He grinned. Travis stiffened. Doug looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Even Maggie's confidence wavered just slightly. "Maggie," Logan said, voice laced with amusement, "I have a question. Did these two order their badges from the same place you get your overpriced lawn decorations? Or did you splurge on the deluxe pack? Doug flinched. Excuse me? Maggie's smirk vanished. Logan leaned against the doorframe, finally spelling it out. These aren't real law enforcement officers. These are guys playing dress-up. Doug paled. Travis clenched his jaw. Care to explain, Logan continued, why your little security force is wearing badges that don't exist? Because last I checked, impersonating an officer is a felony. Maggie's expression darkened. But before she could speak, Travis, bless his overconfidence, stepped forward. I'd watch yourself, Sheriff, he warned. We have full authority here. Logan exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head. Travis, he said, voice almost pitying. You don't even have a real gun. Doug made a choking sound. The tension was thick now, the quiet stretch of the neighborhood suddenly feeling too still. Then Maggie did something unexpected. She stepped even closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. You're making a mistake, Logan. There it was. The way she said his name, not Sheriff, but Logan. Like she wasn't talking about HOA policy anymore. Like she was talking about something bigger. If you refuse to comply, she continued, you may not like the consequences. Logan's jaw tightened. For the first time since opening the door, the air wasn't just tense. It was dangerous. Logan didn't react. He just let Maggie's words hang in the air. You may not like the consequences. A veiled threat. Wrapped in sugar, but still sharp enough to cut. Rex let out a low, warning growl. Maggie barely spared him a glance. Her confidence was unshaken. Logan scratched the back of his neck, sighing like this whole thing was giving him a headache. In reality, his free hand was already sliding into his hoodie pocket, fingers moving fast. Click. The emergency dial to deputy. Jake Reynolds was live. Logan had just sent a silent distress call. Help was on the way, but until then he needed to stall. He straightened, giving the fake officers a long, unimpressed look. Okay, let's pretend for a second that I take you seriously, Travis smirked. Smart choice. Logan held up a finger. Hypothetically speaking, if I were to comply with your HOA law enforcement division, what exactly would that entail? Doug, still clutching the clipboard like a life raft, nervously flipped through pages. His hands were shaking. He's not built for this. He's already cracking. But Travis was soaking up the power trip. For starters, we'll have to issue a fine. He gestured at Logan's cruiser. Unauthorized vehicle. That's violation. 1. Naturally, Logan nodded. And then, if the vehicle isn't removed within 24 hours, we escalate. Ah, escalate, Logan repeated dryly. That's a big word. And how exactly do you escalate? Travis squared his shoulders. You'll be detained. Doug visibly swallowed. Logan fought a grin. Detained. He clicked his tongue. That's bold. Who trained you guys, YouTube? Doug visibly paled. Travis's smirk faltered, but only slightly. Maggie, though, she was still relaxed. Too relaxed. She tilted her head. You think this is funny, Sheriff? Logan sighed dramatically. I mean, kinda. Doug flinched. Maggie's smirk deepened. Laugh it up, Logan. I run this neighborhood. You're just a guest here. Logan's jaw tightened. There it was again. She wasn't just talking about HOA rules. She was testing him, seeing how far she could push. But Logan didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he did something else. He glanced at Doug's clipboard and froze. The top pages were HOA violation slips, bogus fines, nonsense rules. But underneath them, spreadsheets, names, dollar amounts. A lot of them. Logan's pulse quickened. Doug noticed his stare and instinctively tried to pull the clipboard closer. Too late. Logan's hand shot out, yanking the papers free. Doug let out a startled yelp, but Travis lunged forward. Hey! That's private HOA documentation. Logan ignored him. His eyes flicked over the numbers. Thick columns of financial records, huge sums missing from neighborhood accounts. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. This wasn't just about HOA power tripping. This was fraud. And then, the sound of tires screeching. Doug jumped. Travis stiffened. Maggie? Still not panicked. Two black SUVs roared up the street, skidding to a stop. Real badges, Real guns, real law enforcement. Deputy Jake Reynolds stepped out first, grinning like Christmas came early. "What do we got here, Sheriff?" Logan turned, papers still in his grip. "A couple of impersonators." He looked at Maggie. "And a real criminal." For the first time her smirk faded. The HOA office smelled like expensive coffee and bad decisions. Logan sat at a cluttered desk, flipping through Maggie Holloway's personal ledger. The more he read, the worse it got. Bogus fines, fake violations, thousands of dollars funneled into unapproved accounts. Some of the transactions weren't even subtle. Offshore wire transfers, consultation fees paid to unlisted entities. It was blatant fraud wrapped in bureaucracy. Deputy Sarah Collins leaned over his shoulder, arms crossed, her face pale. "That's my parents' address." Logan followed her gaze to a highlighted name. Collins, Everett, and Joanne. HOA fine, $3,500. Violation: unauthorized flower bed alterations. Sarah swallowed hard. They tried to fight it. Next thing they knew, someone slashed my dad's tires. Logan exhaled slowly. He didn't like what that implied. Maggie hadn't. Just been scamming people. She'd been sending a message: comply or pay. Either way, she got what she wanted. A sharp knock broke the tension. Deputy Jake Reynolds leaned into the office, holding up a file. "Doug's talking." Logan shut the ledger. "Let's go hear it." Doug Peters sat slumped in a chair, sweat darkening the collar of his cheap uniform. He looked like a man questioning every life choice that had led him here. Across from him, Logan tossed the clipboard onto the table. The sound made Doug flinch. "Wanna tell me why you're running a protection racket under the name of the Homeowners Association?" Doug's hands twisted in his lap. I didn't know it was this bad." "Oh, you didn't?" Logan raised a brow. "So the fake police badge wasn't a hint?" Doug swallowed. "Look, Travis handled the threats. I just wrote the fines." Jake Reynolds leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "How much were you getting paid?" Doug hesitated. Then finally, $1,000 a week. Cash. Logan whistled low. Not bad for a clipboard and a fake uniform. Doug's knee bounced nervously. Maggie made it sound legit, said she had connections, that if we stuck with her, we'd be protected. Logan's gaze sharpened. "Protected from who?" Doug hesitated. "Too long." "Doug." Logan's voice dropped, deadly calm. "Who else is involved?" Doug wiped his face with both hands. I don't know their names. Maggie handled all of that." Jake pushed off the wall. "So you're telling us she's not the one in charge?" Doug opened his mouth, closed it again. His silence said everything. Maggie wasn't the top of the pyramid. Logan leaned in. "Doug, listen to me. You're looking at felony charges, impersonating an officer, fraud, extortion. You keep playing dumb, and you'll go down with her." Doug's breathing picked up. He was breaking. "It's bigger than just her," he finally blurted. "She always said she answered to someone else. That's why she wasn't afraid of getting caught." Logan and Jake exchanged a glance. Maggie was just a lieutenant. Someone else was running the show, and that meant this wasn't over. Not even close. The cuffs clicked shut around Maggie Holloway's wrists, cold steel against manicured perfection. She didn't resist, didn't fight. She just smirked. "This is just the beginning, Sheriff," she purred, voice smooth as glass. "You have no idea who you just pissed off." Logan Carter didn't flinch. He'd heard plenty of last-minute power plays before. Didn't make them any less stupid. "Yeah?" He motioned to Deputy Jake Reynolds, who tightened the cuffs. "Must have been the same guy I pissed off last week. Remind me, what's his name again?" Maggie's smirk didn't fade, but something shifted behind. Her eyes. That caught Logan's interest. She was still confident, still sure she'd walk, which meant there was a reason. Doug Peters and Travis Mills sat across the interrogation room, both sweating bullets. The fake cops had turned on her the moment they realized their badges wouldn't save them. Doug's knee bounced under the table. "She told us we were protected, that no one would touch us as long as we did what we were told." Logan leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Told by who?" Doug licked his lips. I don't know. She never gave a name. Just called him the investor." Logan's fingers drummed once against the table. And how exactly did this investor help? Travis exhaled hard, glaring at Maggie through the two-way glass. He gave her money, a lot of it. Logan frowned. Money for what? Doug hesitated, then said, rigging the HOA elections, blackmailing homeowners. Hell, some people's houses got condemned over code violations they never had. Jake muttered a curse under his breath. That's a hell of a lot bigger than a parking violation. Logan's gaze flicked back to Maggie through the glass. 6 years. That's how long she'd been HOA president. That's how long she'd been pulling this scam, the fines, the threats, the mysterious rule changes that always seemed to benefit her. It had never just been about control. It had been about money, and someone outside this HOA was funding her. Someone powerful. Logan stood, stretching out his shoulders. Find out where that money's coming from. Jake nodded and stepped out. Logan took his time walking back into the interrogation room, where Maggie sat waiting, still smirking. So, Logan said, dropping into the seat across from her, the investor. What's his name? Maggie's lips parted slightly like she might answer. Then she just smiled. You're out of your depth, Sheriff. Logan exhaled. See, that's the thing. Maggie, every time someone tells me that, they end up in cuffs. He gestured to her wrists. Kinda like this. She didn't take the bait. Didn't even blink. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. That's when Logan knew she wasn't scared, because whoever was behind this, they were a hell of a lot bigger than some suburban HOA queen. His phone buzzed. Jake's voice came through. Sheriff, you're gonna want to see this? Logan took his time standing. Maggie tilted her head. You should drop this while you still can. Logan stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You should worry about yourself, Maggie. She laughed under her breath. Oh, Logan, I'm not the one in trouble. Logan walked out, but the feeling in his gut told him she might not be wrong. The Maplewood Community Center was packed wall to wall. Logan stood near the back, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold. Neighbors shouted over each other, voices raw with anger. The word had spread fast. Maggie's arrest. The stolen money. The fake cops. And now? Now people wanted blood. Where's our money, Holloway? Someone roared from the front. You scammed us! A woman shouted, waving a stack of HOA violation notices. My husband almost sold our house because of you. The HOA board members sat at the long table, looking pale and uncomfortable. They'd backed Maggie for years. Now? They were trying to pretend they had no idea. Cowards. Logan was about to enjoy watching them squirm when the doors flew open. And there she was, Maggie Holloway, out on bail, still dressed like she owned the place. She strode inside, heels clicking against the floor, flipping her blonde hair like she wasn't the most hated woman in the room. For a second, people went silent. Then, you've got some nerve showing up. Here! The dam broke. Shouts filled the air again, voices furious and sharp. Maggie didn't even flinch. Instead, she walked straight to the front, turning to face the board, and smiled. Everyone, calm down, she said smoothly, raising a hand. There's been a lot of misinformation. Logan snorted. Oh, this was going to be good. Misinformation? Nancy Whitmore, the HOA treasurer, pushed to her feet. Her voice was shaky, but her hands were clenched into fists. You stole from us, Maggie. You terrorized people in their own homes. Maggie's eyes narrowed. Careful, Nancy. Her voice was soft, but sharp. You and I both know I'm not the only one with secrets. Nancy paled. And just like that, Logan saw Maggie's last desperate move. Blackmail. Maggie turned to the other board members. If I go down, I'm taking all of you with me. Logan pushed off the wall, shaking his head. Maggie, Maggie, Maggie. She stiffened. What? Logan pulled a flash drive from his pocket and held it up. You remember your little election victories? The ones where you won by a landslide every single time. Maggie's smug look wavered. Yeah, Logan continued, grinning. Turns out when you rig votes, it helps to not do it on a security camera. He tossed the drive onto the table. Nancy snatched it up, shoving it into a laptop. A projector lit up the wall, and there it was, Maggie, alone. In the HOA office at Teague night, swapping out ballots, replacing real votes with pre-filled ones, the room exploded. Maggie's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked scared. People surged forward, shouting, demanding she step down, demanding charges. Logan leaned in close, voice low. "End of the line, Maggie." She whirled around, eyes blazing. "This isn't over." Logan just smiled. "Yeah, it is." The room was chaos. People shouted. Some laughed. Others cursed Maggie Holloway's name loud enough to shake the walls. Logan Carter just stood back and watched the empire crumble. Nancy Whitmore slammed a gavel onto the table. By unanimous vote, Margaret Holloway is officially removed as HOA president. The crowd erupted. A man in the front row whistled. Someone else popped open a can of beer. Maggie, she just stood there, frozen. Logan could see it in her eyes, the moment she realized it was over. Her last move had been blackmail. It failed. Her fake cops had flipped on her. Her fraud was now public record. Her power? Gone. But Logan wasn't done. He pulled a thick manila folder from his jacket and slapped it onto the table. "One last thing before you go, Maggie." She didn't turn. Logan flipped open the file. Inside, bank records, wire transfers leading to offshore accounts in her name. Tens of thousands of dollars stolen from homeowners. Logan sighed. "You really should have been more creative with your laundering." MH Consulting Services? That's embarrassing. Maggie's breath hitched. That was the breaking point. She snapped. With a furious scream, she lunged, nails bared, teeth clenched. Logan didn't move, because he didn't have to. Rex did. The German Shepherd launched forward, snarling, tackling her midair. Maggie hit the floor hard, knocking over a chair on her way down. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people cheered. Deputy Jake Reynolds stepped in, pulling out a pair of cuffs. "Margaret Holloway, you're under arrest. Again," Maggie thrashed as he hauled her up. "You don't know what you're doing." Logan smirked. "I think I do, actually." As Jake read her rights, Logan's phone buzzed. A message. Bank records flagged. Offshore account owner has disappeared. Logan's fingers tightened around the phone. Maggie wasn't the biggest player in this game. The real power was still out there, and they'd just covered their tracks. This wasn't over. The HOA board was officially dissolved by the end of the week. No more bogus fines. No more HOA law enforcement. No more Maggie Holloway. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive again. People let their kids play outside without worrying about noise violations. A few homeowners redecorated their houses in colors Maggie would have had a heart attack over. Someone even threw a block party. Beer, barbecue, and loud music shaking the cul-de-sac. Logan drove through the neighborhood that night, window down, Rex panting happily in the passenger seat. Deputy Sarah Collins' parents had gotten their money back. So had dozens of other families. The county was building a criminal case against Maggie. Felony fraud, extortion, election tampering. She wasn't walking away from this. Logan should have felt satisfied, but he didn't. Something nagged at him. Because Maggie wasn't smart enough to do all this alone, his phone buzzed. A message. No caller ID, just a photo attachment. Logan opened it. A letter. Typed, no signature. Maggie was just a pawn. You don't want to know who's really in charge. A slow smirk tugged at Logan's lips. Oh, but he did, and he'd find them. What do you think about this story? Have you ever seen someone get put in their place like this? Where are you watching from? I love seeing how far our community reaches. Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. Your support means the world.